the Fujifilm X100V and the Leica Q2. Two of the most sought-after high-end fixed-lens camera systems available in the market. Both cameras are built by modern-day design icons. Japanese multinational conglomerate Fujifilm, based in Tokyo, Japan, was founded in 1934, and the legendary German-engineered Leica has been around since 1869, manufacturing high-end cameras and optics for well over a century. Cameras have a curious way of telling their users how to shoot with them. A design philosophy that somehow reaches across the globe and communicates with the operator using only its physical form. The overarching tendency is to treat these cameras as if they're the final deliverable in the creative process. And from a design standpoint, there may be a lot of truth in that sentiment, but from a user perspective, these tools land somewhere in the middle of an ever-evolving creative landscape. Instruments capable of duplicating time. And that's awesome. In an attempt to make this a bit more evergreen, I'm not trying to sell you on either one of these specific cameras. I'm more interested in selling the idea of photography as a whole and what it can do for you as a person. These just happen to be two really good cameras that seem to have an emphasis on the simple legacy and heritage of the craft itself, more so than overwhelming you with features you probably want as a working professional photographer. If you're looking for a camera strictly for professional work, these probably aren't going to be your cameras. And while you could get away with the Leica and maybe the Fuji for a decent chunk of incognito professional scenarios, both Fuji and Leica make higher-end dedicated interchangeable lens systems designed for professional work. Both cameras have a very retro analog design aesthetic, clearly modeled after vintage film style cameras. Most of the crucial settings like aperture, ISO, and shutter speed are immediately available on both cameras through physical controls and dials. Both cameras can be fully automatic or completely manual. And if you're a bit of an old hat and come from the film days, you'd probably feel right at home with either one of these cameras. The Fuji integrates ISO into the same dial used to select shutter speed with a clever little lifting mechanism and a see-through window. It's by far been one of my favorite ways to control brightness on any camera, probably second only to my beloved Rollei 35 SE. If you've ever messed with one of those, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There's something special about having an infinitely variable brightness control that just feels really natural. The Fuji also has a built-in ND filter, which is super handy for bright light scenarios, and it also has a built-in flash for those crappy New York-style front-lit portraits that are super fun. While the Fuji has lots of different ISOs to choose from, the Q2 takes a slightly different approach to exposure and has pretty large ISO jumps, more similar to typical film stock like 200, 400, 800, etc. I like to leave it set at either 400 or 800 and just adjust shutter speed as needed. The shutter speed on the Q2 is deliciously clicky and weirdly satisfying to adjust. You can tell the engineering is super top-notch on it, and it feels like a fine-tuned instrument. Something that might not be as immediately obvious on the Q2 is once you set your shutter speed, you can use the ISO dial to incrementally adjust your shutter speed, which ends up making it much more similar to the X100V in terms of dialing in specific exposure. Both cameras have a fixed lens, but have the ability to digitally zoom. The Q2 uses a classic rangefinder style overlay on the screen and the EVF that shows your crop lines for 28, 35, 50, and 75 millimeters. It has a dedicated button for that overlay. And with a 47 megapixel sensor, you can actually shoot at the 75 millimeter crop and still get usable images for social. The thumb rest for Leica actually integrates an external zoom button, so you still have access to the zoom button with the thumb rest installed. Most third-party thumb rests obscure that little button, and it also has a tiny cutout underneath for that push-button diopter. It's this kind of detail in the Leica that just makes it that much more impressive. The cool thing with the Fuji zoom is that in the optical viewfinder, you get the rangefinder crop lines, but In the EVF and the LCD, you get the actual cropped image preview when you're taking the photo. And that makes it a little easier than the Leica to compose shots in the crop modes. There's a bit of a surprise element though that I really enjoy with the rangefinder crop lines versus the true crop preview. You don't know exactly what your framing is until right after you take the photo. And you can get that with both cams. One really rad feature on the Q2 though is when you take a cropped in photo, the raw data in Lightroom retains the crop info. So if you shoot at 75mm in camera, when you pull in the raw file, it'll still be raw, but at a 75mm crop. And if you want to zoom out, you still have access to the entire photo in the raw file. Here's where the cameras start to differ in a pretty significant way. The Fuji has the ability to build in custom recipes. After trying a ton of different recipes, I almost exclusively use Kodachrome 64 and a version of Portrait 400 from the Fuji X Weekly app. It also has some pretty sweet black and white filtering options that I'm addicted to. The JPEGs from the Fuji are what make this camera so fun. You can dial in your custom recipe and spit out JPEGs with built-in grain, highlight reduction, shadows, chrome effects, all sorts of fun stuff. There's tons of interesting recipes floating around the internet too that can make this camera look like a ton of different film stocks. The Q2 has some kind of special sauce in its JPEGs that I really can't put my finger on. I love the colors right out of the camera, and they act as an awesome base for editing. And I always slightly edit the colors in VSCO with some recipes I've made. I usually don't even load them into Lightroom on a desktop, just send them straight to my phone through the Leica app and edit them there. And this is a pretty big difference between these two cams. When I shoot on the Fuji, I never end up editing the photos or even shooting in RAW. All the editing is done in the recipes before I ever click the shutter. Then I send them straight to my phone through the app and I'm done. The playing happens all within the camera. With the Q2, taking the photo feels a bit more refined and mature. You're creating photos with the Q2. Everything feels just slightly more intentional and almost serious. It's slower and more methodical, fast to operate, but usually more thoughtful than when I'm on the Fuji. I tend to spray and pray a lot more with the Fuji, and it's probably because of that little low angle flip out screen. The Q2 doesn't have a flippy screen, and you have to hold it up a little bit higher to see the screen, and for whatever reason, I think it makes you commit just a little bit more before you click the shutter. The playing element on the Q2 happens more on my phone in VSCO than in the camera. There's a slight mental shift in the workflow there, even though it's probably mostly subliminal. To me, it says that the camera is for making photos and the phone is for playing. And I like the mental separation. On the Fuji, the whole thing feels like it's meant for play. It's not a very serious camera. And while it can take seriously good photos, it's mostly meant for fun. It's lightweight and it's flexible. There's just an undeniable cool factor that comes with the red dot too. If you know, you know. If you own one, you're part of some elite unspoken club. I mean, the queen shot on a Leica. But you can also probably think of the red dot as a price tag that doesn't ever come off. The elephant in the room is that the Leica is about 3 times the price of the Fuji. So is it 3 times the camera? Before using the Q2, I thought, of course not. It's the law of diminishing returns. But after using the Q2, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, yeah, I think it actually is worth 3 times more than the Fuji. Can you make incredible images with both cameras? Absolutely. But the crown jewel, full frame 28mm 1.7 macro switchable Summilux lens is dang hard to beat. That thing looks absolutely stunning. There's a certain 3D quality that I'm just not seeing in the Fuji files. That slightly wider focal length on the Q2 paired with the full frame bokeh just produces, to my taste anyway, more interesting and memorable photos overall. The build quality is noticeably superior to the Fuji, which is saying a lot because the Fuji feels incredible in your hands. Everything's right where it should be. The Leica feels like a precision engineered watch though, like not a single thing is out of place, every dial rotation, button click, it's all there. It feels like I could hand it down as an heirloom. And you just don't get that same feeling with the Fuji. I end up tossing the Fuji around a lot more and am much more carefree with the Fuji, which sometimes is a good thing, and I forget it's on my shoulder more often than the Leica. The Q2 is a bit heavier and I'm just aware of it more often. The funny thing about camera reviews is that most of this information is going to be totally obsolete in the very near future. Our desire as a whole for the latest, the greatest gear will probably overcome any kind of modesty or practicality. We buy on emotion rather than logic, and we're sold on the idea of what owning a specific piece of gear will do for our lifestyles or careers. So while I tease you with camera footage and test shots, let me just objectively say that you do not need either of these cameras. They're incredible and ridiculously fun to play with and use, but they're most definitely luxury 1%er kind of tools. So don't get caught up in thinking that just because, Peter McKinnon and Greg Williams have one, that it'll make you a better photographer than you already are. Hope this helps inform your decision. They're both great cameras. Remember, the very best camera is the one you have with you. And if it just so happens to be either one of these two cameras, you're in a very, very good spot. I'll see you in the next one.